Ever want to learn pro animation with Autodesk Fusion? Stick around and you'll improve your skills and learn a ton in this tutorial by the Learn It channel. So the first thing we're going to do is go to our workspace here and select our animation workspace. Now you might notice with our other tutorials we use slightly a lower resolution. However, for this tutorial we're going to a higher resolution because we need to use a special feature within animation that makes our life a whole lot easier. Now, if you have dual monitors, this is a lot easier, but for the sake of this tutorial, we're just going to stick with one monitor for most of the users out there and show you how to utilize it. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring our window over. And yes, this is a picture that I took in the past. But anyways, we're going to go down to our animation timeline here and we're going to drag it and move it off to the side. And we're going to extend this. We're going to use this entire animation timeline. So yeah, just arrange it so that it's approximately in the right position. There we go. Now, what we have is exactly the same thing, but instead of our animation timeline on the bottom, we have it on the side here. So again, this is for professionals and this hopefully will make sense to you pretty quickly. Now, second of all, we are going to turn off our camera. We don't want to record anything. If we leave it on, any movement that we make, you can see, is now recorded in our timeline. I'm going to move it. There's another record. I'm going to move it. There's another record. And when we play back our recording, well, it follows every single thing that we do. Every movement, it will record. So we don't want to do that. We want to start again at our beginning here. And we're just going to delete those three by hitting the delete key. Let's move this off to the side. Now, we're going to do all of our transforms, all of our movements first, and then add our camera movements at the very end. So again, let's turn off our view. You can see view is not recording. And now we can get started with our actual movements. So at this point, it is fundamental to know that your model, your assemblies, your sub-assemblies all have to be done properly. And if they're not, your animation is going to be really hard to create. And so if you'd like to know how to properly create components, subcomponents, sub-assemblies, things like this, I would suggest that you watch the previous tutorials on how to do this shed. Design it yourself, follow along with the tutorial so that you can understand the fundamental principles of how to go about a proper workflow. But we're not going to get into that now because we're talking about animation. So what we're going to do is usually, as you saw with the opening of this animation, the whole shed is being assembled. And we might think that we have to hide everything and then assemble it from the ground up, but that is very tedious and not a good way of going about it. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to disassemble everything and then reverse our storyboard at the end. So it's like everything is being assembled. So how would I like to start this? Well, I'd like to start with the doors coming off. As you saw in the beginning of this tutorial, the animation, we saw the doors, being disassembled, and then everything from there, the siding, the windows, the roof, all the way down to the concrete footings over here. So there's a couple of things you must keep in mind. How long do you want the animation to be? How far do you want each component, in this case with the shed, to move away before disappearing? There's a lot of different questions to ask. But again, for the sake of this tutorial, we're going to be moving rather quickly and we're not going to be finessing everything. That would take way, way too long. That's something for you to do in your own time, but you will understand the principles by the end of this tutorial for sure. So let's start off with the doors here, and we're going to go and expand siding, and we have our door ready to go. So what I'm going to do is select the entire door template. In this case, it's our door assembly, and we're going to transfer components. So here we're going to, actually before we do that, let's just go cancel. We're going to move our timeline off to, you know what, each transition or each movement, I'm going to, let's go to 3 seconds. Now what we can do, select our entire door template, transform components, and we're going to move this out. And what I'd like to do is have a standard. I'm going to move everything away, or the larger components, about 50 inches. And then we're going to hide them. We're going to do all sorts of neat little things. But let's just move this off 50 inches. There we go. And you can see as soon as I click OK, we've got our first movement. And we can press play. And there's our door moving away. Now what I'm going to do is let's expand door template here, and we've got left door, right door. Now, for the sake of this tutorial, we are going to not have everything assemble and disassemble, but we're going to separate these two, and then I'm going to hide this left door. So let's do that. I am going to transform. Oh, let's move this on over to another 3 seconds in the future. Transform this over, and again, the 50 inches here doesn't apply in this case. We're just going to apply it to each door, and we're going to go over here, and we're going to move this over 10 inches as well. Perfect. Now don't worry about hiding everything. We're going to do that at the very end. Now at this point, we probably want to, as it is moving off to the side, as our left door is moving off to the side with our movement here, we're going to hide it. So let's select our left door, and we're just going to simply go show hide. And now look at what we have here. We've got this little light bulb, and this is showing as we press play, the doors are going to move away. Then they're going to separate from each other, and then all of a sudden the left door disappears. Well, how about we add a slow disappearance or slow transition there? Well, how do we do that? We're going to go to that light bulb, and as you can see, as I hover my mouse cursor over it, we have the 4 arrows here, and then if we just move it off to the side, we can adjust this. And I am going to adjust this to about 1.5 seconds, and you can see now our light bulb turns black, which means it's going to fade. So let's press play again. And here, as the door separates, it's going to fade out and disappear. Now we can focus just on the right door, which is great. So here we go. Now what I'm going to do is we're going to separate the hardware. I'm going to expand this assembly. I'm going to separate the hardware first of all. So let's grab, and again here, we have to move this off. I'm going to do another 3 seconds. We're going to grab our handle, and let's grab let's just do the handle first of all. So the large components, we move 50 inches away. The small components, I'm just going to move 10 inches away. There we go. We're going to do the same thing over here with the hinges. But with the hinges, I'm going to move them over. There we go, 10 and away. There we go, 10 and 10, just like that. Great, so now we've got the hardware moving away, and you can see all of our hardware in our animation timeline. Now what we want to do is pick those 4 components, and we can just press Command or Control on a Windows computer to select more than one component, and I'm going to hide those as well. The exact same thing. Now we've got these 4 light bulbs, and they're positioned at the same point in our timeline. So I'm going to select all of those light bulbs there, hiding it. And here again, I'm going to add this subtle transition, this subtle disappearance with our visibility here. So let's just press play, see what happens. There we go, the doors separate, the left door disappears, and now our components, our hardware also disappears. Perfect, it's looking great. So we're going to do the exact same thing. And remember here, because I'm moving around so much, I want to select components, and I don't want it to track all of the movements of my camera. So that's why we've turned it off. Okay, great. So now let's take all of these individual components, and the ones on the center, well, I kind of want to explode them out towards our current view right now. So let's do this. We've moved over 3 seconds in our timeline. Let's go to, and here, if we don't know which one to pick in our browser, we can just select it right there, and this is our upright. Perfect. So I'm going to transform this. We're going to move this out 10 inches and away 10 inches. There we go. And we're going to do that with all the rest. Here for these guys, the angles, we're just going to go up half the distance here, 5 inches. And the same thing over here. As you can see, every movement that I'm making, it's recording it in our animation timeline, which is exactly what we want. And our middle style as well. And this one's just going to go at 10 inches. So here we have all of our components. They've been exploded to the distance that we'd like. And now let's just pick all of them. There we go, and hide. And again, we run into the same situation over here. If we were to just press play, You can see this is looking great. Doors move away from the shed. Left door disappears. Hardware moves out, disappears. Our individual pieces move out, and then boom, they're gone. So we have to pick these individual light bulbs. Very good. And then just grab any of them, move it on over. Very good. 10.5. Perfect. So just as something to keep in mind, we can always right click on these and change the duration. Here we have it 1.5 seconds. Sometimes those are hard to find. We can do a start and an end, whatever we want. That makes it really easy to adjust animations. So here we go. We're going to move over 3 more seconds and we're going to make this panel disappear. So let's just do that. We can select our panel and go disappear. And in fact, here I would probably want to adjust this a little bit. Yeah, I'm going to make this a 1.5 seconds as well. Let's just right click and change the duration. Yeah, 1.5. There we have it. And I can just place this actually. We can grab and place it towards the end. And let's just see what this looks like. I'm going to move my timeline over, press play. And again, our hardware is going to disappear. Those individual components move out, disappear, and then our door disappears. So this is looking great. Very, very good. Let's just go to the end. Now, what's next? Well, I'm going to take all of the siding. Let's take not all the siding, all of the trim pieces and do the exact same thing. So here we go. I'm going to pick 1, 2, 3, and let's not forget to move our timeline over. Right now, this is at 12, so I'm going to go over to 15 seconds. Perfect. And you know what? I'm going to pick all these are going to move away 50 inches away from the shed. So we can do that. Perfect. And then let's not forget to kind of flare them out a little bit. So I'm going to grab this top one. We're going to move this up. I don't know, just 10 inches is fine. And then these guys as well. Let's move this on over 10. Okay, so we've got those moving out. Now the windows are different. We're going to save these windows for another part on our animation timeline, but we can move these other pieces of the trim on out here. And we can input these numbers manually as well. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm sure to get some comments that say, how come you just don't input the numbers? Well, let's try it. We have to grab the arrow first, 50. There we go. That saves us some time. Just sometimes easier, you can just move it over really quickly. Perfect. And these ones, I don't think I want to flare those out. I'm just happy with how those are kind of moving away from the shed. And what we can do now, let's select all of these. We can select it in our timeline and hide them. Perfect. Now you can see the duration of them is a lot shorter than these. Remember, these are 3 seconds long. So now that we selected those, actually, I think we need to select them again. Yeah, let's do that. Now we can move these on over. And what do we have? 15 to 12. That's right. There we have it. Great. And now I'm just going to grab those light bulbs and do the exact same thing. Sometimes the timeline gets in your way, so I'm just going to move the timeline over here. Let's go over to the 18. Great. And we can pick those individual light bulbs. Now it's a lot easier without the timeline in the way. And we can move this on over. Perfect. Okay, let's see how this looks now. Just going to go back a little bit. Press play. As you start the animation, it starts off a little slow, and that's okay. Then it goes to full speed the next round. So if that's frustrating to some, just get used to the flow of how the animation timeline works. But so far, this is looking great. So now what would I like to do? Well, let's talk about the windows. So the windows, we're going to do kind of the same thing as our doors. We're going to move them out. I'm going to hide 2 of the windows. Let's hide the 2 ones on the outside and keep the one on the inside. So remember, move this over again to 18 seconds. We're going to grab our windows. Let's find where they are. There they are. Okay, window. There, we're going to grab all 3 of those. Let's move them on out. Perfect. Now, let's see. Window 1 we want to keep. Now, these are named Windows 4 and 5 simply because of my previous workflow. I practiced on Windows 2 and 3 first of all, and Fusion keeps those numbers kind of in the background. And so anyways, I deleted them and created new ones, and that's why they're named 4 and 5. But let's move these off to the side. So we've got 1, 2, 3. We're going to go to another 3 seconds in the future here. This one we're going to move off to the side. Let's see here, window 4. Let's move that off to the side 10 inches. And window 5. I'm going to move this the other way. And again, we're going to select those two in our browser here and then just hide them. So here we have it. We're going to adjust those light bulbs and let's see how this looks. So kind of the theory that I have is when the windows are coming away from the shed and then these two separate and disappear, I'm going to be zooming into the mid window. Great, let's just go to the end of our timeline right there. So another additional 3 seconds into the future. And we're going to separate all of our individual components for window 1. So there we have it. Let's just do the same thing here. Now that we have those 4, let's hide them and extend the visibility timing. And once we have that, we can just play our animation to make sure it's what we like. Very good. So far, so good. So you can see quickly we run into our timeline getting very, very big. So this is the whole point about separating or using 2 different monitors. But let's just finish up our window here. Very good. And we can pick all 4 of those and hide them just the same. If I didn't specify it clearly enough before, if you want to pick more than one item in your browser or your timeline, you hold down Command on a Mac, Control on Windows. And we're going to move this on over again as usual. Very good. Now for in the past, what we had here was our panel disappear for our door, and we kind of want to do the same thing. So I'm going to move this on over 1.5 seconds, and we're going to pick our window pane here and hide that as well. And now it has kind of the same parameters as our door. Okay, and you can see there that the window turned solid first of all, and then went transparent, and that's just something we have to deal with within Fusion Animation. Okay, so what's next? Well, I would probably we could do the roof. Yeah, let's do the roof here. So I didn't do the shingles and everything just because I've been going on for a long time with this tutorial, and I'm sure that you just want to see it over at this point. So let's go over to 30 seconds now, and I'm going to pick. These I'm going to have staggered just a little bit. So let's move this, and we can move those up 50 inches as well. And I'm going to have them spread away from each other just a little bit too. I mean, it's so easy to do. Why not? Let's keep the system going here. Move it over 10 inches. Perfect. Okay. And you can see the timing of this is a little shorter than the other, so I want to extend these out to the 3 seconds as well. Now, instead of moving this over 3 seconds, I'm just going to move it over 1 second. So we kind of got this staggered type of movement away from our shed. Now, here we go. As soon as we go to transform, you can see that the normal of our movement is going straight up, but we want it normal to our plywood. So how do we do that? Well, we can just go set pivot. There we go. And look at this, just hover over our piece and the normal changes. Remember to hit check when we're done. And now we can move this. Let's move it away 50 inches as well and do exactly the same. Let's pick our component first, then move. In this instance, we don't really care about the normal, and we know that they won't collide because one's going to be disappearing while the other one's going to be moving up. So don't worry too much about that. There we go. And the last one's here. The normal is proper in this, or it's correct in this instance, so we have nothing to worry about. Right, we're going to adjust the timing just a little bit here, and you can see that I forgot to move these over a second. So let's move this on over. We can just move that in the timeline to 32. Yeah, and then move these guys. Great, right there. And the total duration of them is going to be 3 seconds as well. Very good. So now I'm just going to select those two, and hide them. And you can see it's hiding it at the right time in our timeline. Very good. Let's do those two and hide. Perfect. So now we just have to adjust the timing of our hiding duration or transparent duration here. Now let's see if we like it. Right, those move off. Everything's floating up. Perfect. Awesome. Okay, very good. Let's move our timeline over here. You can see, yeah, we're getting a lot of things very quickly. So now how about we remove all of our siding and we'll use the same methods. I'll speed it up a little bit here so that you can see it's just lather, rinse, repeat. Always repeat. So here we go. Let's do it together. Here's one problem that I'm running into actually. As I'm hovering over the component I want, I'm selecting one in the background. So you can just hover over it with your mouse and there we go, plywood. Hover over it. There we go. Hold down Command in my case and click. Hover over that piece. There we go. It's this one. So that's just another way you can find it and make sure that you're clicking on the right one. That's kind of the fastest way that I notice how to do it. So let's keep on going. Oh, and I forgot to move over my timeline here. So let's do that too. So I think with these, I'd like it to move away and separate at the same time. That way we don't have to run into too much timing with the animation here. So I'm going to keep the timeline just at the exact same position and continue to adjust these as I please. So one question you might be asking is, with each of these movements, does it record each of these movements? Well, in our case, because we have it set at the same position in our timeline, it's only going to record the final position and get there in a smooth fashion. So yeah, that's a good question to ask. I hope that answers it, but there we go. So you can see we've exploded this view, and of course we're going to hide it in a moment, but let's just go around and do the same thing with the others. Okay, so now that we have everything exploded the way we want, we just have to add the hiding feature to it. So I'm going to pick everything there. We're going to hold down Shift. Pick the first one, hold down Shift. Pick the last one. That works on Windows and Mac. And let's hide it. There we go. Now this is a little bit tedious here, so I'm going to move my timeline over and pick all these and adjust the timing as desired. Okay, and let's just play back to verify it's what we like. Very good. Okay, let's keep on going. So what are we going to do next? Well, let's do the roof. And what we can do all of these rafters on the top. And what I'd like to do is slowly stagger them so that they kind of all fall or separate from the shed one at a time instead of all at once. So what we're going to do, let's move this on over. We're going to go to 3 inches as well. And we're going to pick all of them. So let's go to the roof here. And we're just going to pick rafters, all of the rafters. Let's move them up all together. And you can see our normal is not correct. So let's adjust our pivot point. Hit check to lock it in, and then we can move it. There we go. Let's move it on over 50. Perfecto. Okay. So now everything has moved, but we want to stagger them. So probably what I'm going to suggest is we're going to hide all of them at this point. Adjust our hiding settings because it's going to save us a lot of time, I think. Yeah, let's just do that. Now, of course, we want to stagger them. So how are we going to do it? Well, we have to make sure that these go in order. Sometimes in our animation timeline over here, they're not placed in order. So we just have to make sure that they are. And we can do that simply. I'm going to bring the timeline somewhere in the middle and just make sure as I click on this, it's the one off to the side here. So let's, yeah, pick those two. That's great. Number 2, we're just going to stagger this. What are we going to do? 0.1. Maybe we can go more than that. Maybe we can go half a second. Let's do that. And you can see here, rafter 5 is not the one we want. We want this one. Rafter 4 is out of order. Perfect. So we're going to grab that and our hiding light bulb. And yeah, we can select our component in our actual, design model here, or we can find it in our timeline or in our browser, either or. But now we're working with rafter 5, so I'm going to grab those. Amazing. Rafter 6, and just go down the line and finish it. This is a little bit more of the tedious part of things, but that's okay. It all works out. Okay, so I think everything is in order here. Let's see how it looks with our animation. Well, I don't know about you, but that is pretty sweet. Fusion is a cool program. That's all I've got to say about that. Okay, so now we've got all of these walls, individual studs, everything here. Now this would take a really long time to explode everything and then to adjust all of the hiding durations and everything. So what we're going to do is we're just going to separate each individual wall and hide it at the same time. So this is the good thing about having a good workflow and creating your individual subcomponents properly. So under our front wall, we've got everything within here. And now we don't have to select every single individual component, but we're just going to pick one. Let's move this on over to, where are we around here? 45. We're going to go 45 and a half. Yep. And we're going to move everything together as a subassembly. And look at how much our life becomes easier in our timeline. We've just got one component being moved instead of these hundreds of individual subcomponents or some subassemblies there. So let's just do that around the block here. We're going to do the rear wall as well, followed by each of our side walls. Very good. And in our animation timeline, let's just pick all 4, show hide, move it on over 3 seconds, and adjust our light bulbs. Let's see how it looks. Okay, so we are progressing here. Now let's do the exact same thing to finish this up, and then we'll talk about our camera recording. And we're going to do the same process with all of our joists. Now, instead of making those fall individually into place, kind of like the roof, we're just going to do this as an entire subassembly all together. And this is just for timing's sake. Yeah. Okay, now we've moved our timeline over already. Let's pick our last ones here, and these should be the easiest. And last but not least, so our entire animation's just under a minute. Let's pick all of our concrete blocks there, move them up. Great, those are going to fall into place too. Why not? Great. Okay, so we've got everything in place, and what we can do, let's just move that back. Once we have everything in place over here, we can start working on our camera movements. Okay, but first, let's just make sure that our animation is just as we want. We can go back in time here. Let's go play. Great, so now that our animation is done, let's talk about one important thing, that is saving. Let's do it. Because what we're going to do now is we're going to reverse our storyboard. Now, here's the thing. We don't want to reverse the storyboard that we just created. I am going to copy it and paste it. So now we're going to have a storyboard 2 copy. And the reason I'm doing this is just because I don't want to worry if something messes up. I just want to go back in time and maybe delete this storyboard or create a new one or whatever. But I'm just going to rename this reverse. And we're going to right click it and reverse. Now give this some time to do its thing. Very good. Let's go back in time now. And make sure that we pick our reverse storyboard. We're going to start from the beginning and let's see what happens. So at this point, as we watch the animation unfold before our very eyes in reverse, we just like to send out a special shout out to all of our supporters. So we've had many support us, whether it's been through commenting or subscribing, liking, doing things like that, sending us personal messages on Facebook or Instagram or whatever the case. However, there's been some others too who love our channel, and they have supported us by becoming a YouTube member or a Patreon member, buying us a coffee. All those links can be found in the description. So if you have benefited from these tutorials at all, please consider liking, please consider subscribing, hitting that notification bell. It would mean so much to us, and it would help get our tutorials out into the YouTube world. And if you love our tutorials, well, please consider becoming a member, and all those details can be found in the description to this video below. So now that we've verified that the animation looks great in reverse, we'd like to do some sort of camera movements. And here's where I don't think Fusion particularly excels. However, we can still kind of get the idea of our animation in place here. And we kind of have to think about, well, what kind of movements do we want? Well, I'd like, as our floor and the concrete blocks fall down and everything, I'd like to just kind of make a slow little rotation, slow little orbit, something like this. And if you're wondering how I'm able to do this so easily, I have a 3D SpaceMouse, 3D Connection SpaceMouse Pro. I have links in the description below if you're interested. But if not, you can always do this, using your middle mouse button to pan and then shift middle mouse button to orbit as well. But the 3D SpaceMouse is awesome to use for this particular case. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to see in my timeline where I'd like to stop orbiting. So probably around the point of my walls appearing, I'd like to kind of, zoom in, orbit a little bit as the floor is falling. And then as the walls start appearing, I'd like to just hold it steady. And let's see what happens there. So we've positioned our timeline right before the walls start appearing. And what I'd like to do is let's go to our starting position somewhere over here. And we're going to go back over here to our start position and our initial view. We're going to go back to recording, and let's press play and see where our initial view is. There we go. Okay, so we're going to go back to our initial view, and this is kind of hard. This is kind of difficult. You know what? I'll probably just go back to our ISO view up at the top. So let's do that. We're going to go back up there, go to our ISO view, and again, this is kind of hard to see because we can't see anything, right? But that's okay. As we move this over, I am going to go right before the walls start showing here. And maybe before that, I'll probably go to somewhere around here, and we're just going to do this movement. I'm just going to zoom in to approximately where I want to go. And you can see now at the top, we have a camera movement. Now it's a very short camera movement, so we need to expand this all the way to the start. Very good. And now we're going to move over to right before our walls appear. And again, we can just find this position right there. And I'd like to do another orbit and zoom, something like this. And it's in the same direction as my original camera movement. So let's go back there to the beginning. It's not like, we're orbiting and zooming, kind of looking at the front here, moving to the left. We don't all of a sudden go to the right. And you'll notice that you can see that it's a little bit, okay, it's not the best, so that's all right. We're going to go back to our initial camera movement. And we don't want it to delete our entire storyboard. No, we're just going to press delete there. There we go. Okay. So we're going to go back in time and maybe split this in half. So let's just go like that. Now we've got our camera set up there, and we can go back to our next view and we can kind of orbit around a little bit more. There we go. And why don't I just delete this and move this on over to 12 seconds. and do the same thing. I'm just going to move it over subtly. These are subtle movements. In this instance, we don't want to do anything too dramatic. And now let's see what's happening. So this is a little bit more of the fussy part of Fusion animation. And you can see, yeah, it's not really working the best for us until we get to that point, which is okay. Again, this is where you have to kind of fuss a little bit more with what you'd like. So anyways, at this point, right before the roof starts falling down, I'd like to probably go to maybe this position. And again, I'm going to orbit and zoom maybe a little bit over here. There we go. So from 12 seconds to 15.5 seconds, you can see we've got a nice subtle continued orbiting and zooming kind of in the same direction. There we go. There's a lot of processing going on right here. So it's moving up. We just like to see the rafters fall into place. And now at this point, how long is it going to take? Yeah, maybe from there to there. I'd like to maybe do something like this. I'm going to zoom in. Okay. Now let's see how that looks. We're just picking our final camera position at the point of our timeline. Oh, now what's going on? Oh, that's when my computer explodes. I should be okay. So there we go. Yeah, all the rafters are falling into place over here. That's looking pretty sweet. Excellent. Now remember, we're going to kind of continue in that same motion. We could probably jump back a little more quickly here. So I'm just going to move. I'd like to see the siding come in. And the roof is going to be coming down as well. Very good. So that was a little bit of a jerky movement. The camera adjustment, because we've kind of changed directions here, it was a little bit jerky. So I'm just going to give it a couple fractions of a second there. There we go. And we're going to, let's go back, sorry. Let's go back in time here to our last camera angle. And remember, we're kind of orbiting in this direction. We're pulling away. Very good. Now the roof is falling. Now I'd like to, maybe, I'm going to zoom in, back in, and see our window. And maybe go to that position right there. Yeah. Again, we're going to, because it's changing direction, we're just going to give it a couple fractions of a second of time to give our eyes a break so that there's not so many jerky movements. There we go. Zoom on in here. The roof is falling. Now we're going to look at our window being assembled. Excellent. And we're going to keep on going in that specific direction. Maybe give it a few more seconds here. Yeah. Okay, right around there. And I'm going to keep on going in that direction and maybe zoom and orbit to that position. And I think we can do a continued motion right there with our timeline. Let's keep on going. So that particular movement, probably not my favorite, but yeah, that's where the finessing can take place. But regardless, what we're going to do is we're going to just kind of move over here and we can adjust our camera movement. Yeah, let's do something like that. I'm going to give it a couple. There we go. Just a little bit of time in between. And then I'm going to slowly back out as the shed gets finished with its being assembled. So here we can add a little bit more time there. Great. All the trim is being put on. The door is being assembled. Amazing. And as that's doing its thing, right at the very end, we can just slowly move out. Again, a nice little subtle movement just like that to get the shed in position. Very good. And now at the very end, I'm just going to pull it back just a little bit more. Very subtle positioning there. Adjustments. Very good. And we want to extend just a little bit of time at the very end. Let's put it right to 1 minute. I'm just going to slowly move my mouse so that the final position of our camera gets locked into place. So let's watch this animation again from the start in all its glory. Very good. So definitely things that we could improve there. But what I'm going to do is we're going to hide our animation timeline right now. And what we're going to do is just going to drag it back there and put it at the bottom of our animation. There we go. Let's move this on over. And at this point, we could also check just to make sure that the positioning of our shed, which is right in the middle of our screen, is looking really good. We can make sure that's exactly where we'd like it positioned. And right now it actually might be a little bit too high up. However, I think it's going to be okay. Yeah, I think it's going to be all right. So if we're happy with the positioning, and again, if we've done, if we have to fix our camera positions, it's very easy to do. We can just delete it, go back to the final position that we like, move our mouse a little bit, and it locks it into place. But once we're ready to go, you can see that our animation is not the best with its frame rate, and there's some glitches and everything. That's because we haven't published it yet. So let's go to publish. And we can pick our current window document size, and let's go OK. I'm just going to save it to the desktop. And I think I did a mistake here. So let's go publish, and we don't want all storyboards. We are going to pick current storyboard. There we go. Let's go OK. And let's go save. And yes, we want to overwrite the one that we just wrote. So this takes a little bit of time, but we'll let it do its thing. So one bonus thing just before we finish is we would love to see your works of art as well. If you have created a shed design like this and you create an animation, please send it to us. You can send it to our Facebook page or our email. You can find that on the About section to our YouTube channel. Reach out to us. Let us know what you've done. If you have a different project that you've worked on, we would love to see it. Please feel free to send it to us so that we can learn from your skills too. So now to finish up, let's watch the final animation, which is going to have a little bit of music to it to make it a little bit more enjoyable. But here you go and enjoy. Thanks for tuning in to the Learn It channel.